Check. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Welcome to the Stadium Pulse, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your patience here today as we will be a little bit off schedule. I'll be honest here. Traditionally, we're not talking on Wednesdays. We're usually a Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday show, but I'll be honest here. I was in Nashville. I was getting a little busy. And if you did want to see my instant reactions from week 5 of the college football season, I really do recommend going and checking out my TikTok page. It's just my first and last name, Tegan Randolph, on TikTok. Also, go shoot over a follow on the X side of things. But I don't want you to get too distracted, as you've come to the right place if you like talking college football. We only talk college football around here. This is all powered by Kretschman Media. If you want to get a taste of potentially NBA content, I know the season's coming up, even some football stuff. We've had some great content being built on other channels. So just go check that out. I highly recommend it. But, you know, give this a shot as well. If you're a college football fan, or if you're a new-time college football fan, I promise you, you've come to the right place. We are going to have a jam-packed show. Traditionally, on the Stadium Pulse, we do about a 30-minute show. That's what we try to keep it nice, concise, consistent. But there's just too much to talk about. The slate is just too good. And so because I missed the Sunday show, and traditionally we do reactions and talk about that, I'm going to kind of create a longer version of what would be the Sunday show. Tomorrow, though, we're going to be talking about week 6, a little bit lighter of a slate, do our predictions, try to get those out, and we'll get back into a rhythm the next week. But with that in mind, let's dive in. We have about Bama UGA, Penn State, Oregon, Ole Miss, LSU, Auburn, A&M on the back of the page. Traditionally, I can keep it on one sheet. We go to Tennessee, Mississippi State, and we'll talk OSU and Washington, not to mention Illinois going and beating USC. We have Georgia Tech getting lucky, and I mean lucky, against Wake Forest. And let's not forget, Fernando Mendoza continues to rise up the Heisman ranks in a win against Iowa, getting a bettor's worst nightmare on a last-second safety to close out that game. We are going to have a loaded show. So with that in mind, let's start off with the biggest game of the weekend, in my opinion, or at least the best of the two top games, Bama and Georgia. Some things never change, and Bama just continues to beat Georgia. It's the same thing that we saw with Tennessee and Georgia, a team that continuously, no matter what the circumstances are, they can't beat another program. And it's that specific program that they just can't get over the hump. Maybe you have the off chance of winning a national championship against that program, but consistently, year in and year out, if you were to face that program, they got your number. They know exactly how to beat you, regardless of if it's Nick Saban or Kalen DeBoer. Now, the first thing, I'm going to put my right hand up real quick. It's apology time. I questioned Alabama's character, their manhood, their competitiveness, everything across the board that you could deem potentially disrespectful. I probably said it about Alabama. And honestly, I don't want to do the revisionist history thing, because we could do that, right? Where I could say, maybe I was wrong and be very reactionary. But after that Florida State loss, I thought I was pretty justified in questioning that. Watching players jog on that football field, get out physicaled against a Florida State program that had just won, 2 games the year prior. You had projected one of the best offensive lines in the entire country, and you were consistently getting pushed around for 4 straight quarters. And Florida State was honestly better than what we expected. But at the end of the day, I thought questioning the competitiveness of this program was justified. Now, to be fair, there you can make the argument that maybe I was comparing it to the Nick Saban era of teams, but that's not where I was coming from. More to the lack of preparation, the lack of coming up to the moment, kind of waddling into a week one sleepwalking, to be honest, against a Florida State program that beat you down. So I still feel that the dynasty is not there, but this is an incredibly impactful win. Let's talk about some of the positives, right? Because we're at week 6 at this point, and they walked into Athens Stadium and beat Georgia. And we could talk about the fact that not only did they beat Georgia, not only did they get a monumental win for Kalen DeBoer, and in back-to-back years, whether it's at home or away, they beat Georgia. They were 4 for 4 in the red zone, 13 of 19 on third down on the road. And they didn't even run the ball that effectively. And I think that's one of the stories we have to talk about with Alabama is Ryan Grubb's creative ability to have I'm trying to think of the best way to construct how I'm trying to say this, but a unique way of extending the rushing attack, what could be an extension of the running game. Because I think if you go watch that game, it was a masterclass by Ryan Grubb. And you would think a team to get 13 of 19 on third down in that road environment, they must have been averaging, 4+ yards per carry, dominating on the run. Short yardage was nothing for him. If they got to 3rd and 3, it was easy. But Ryan Grubb had a different perspective or a different avenue of achieving this. Not only was it highly impressive to not have as many penalties, knowing Alabama's struggles on the road, knowing how Alabama's been undisciplined, that was impressive in of itself. But the ability to get a guy like Ty Simpson, who stepped up, a veteran quarterback who had stayed with this program for a very long time, to just make the easy passes. I think you could honestly make the argument that there is no defensive coordinator or defense in that country on that night that could have stopped Ty Simpson on third down, or let alone across the entire game. I know NFL GMs took note of it. I think a lot of people took note of Ryan Grubb and what he was being able to orchestrate to confuse this Georgia defense that we all know isn't going to be at the same level of 2022 and 2023 or any previous iterations of Kirby Smart's defenses. They're not as disciplined. We saw it on the last play that basically sealed the game, watching a player come over the top of an entire pile, completely unnecessary. This team is not as disciplined as previous Kirby Smart teams, and Ryan Grubb knew that. And when I say the extension of a running attack, what does that mean to you? What do you think of when I say that? People usually will tend to think, oh, it's just a screen pass here. It's just little things here and there. But truthfully, it's a little bit more than that. And when we're talking about being able to get a quarterback on the move, the quick passes, what would be a receiving yard could honestly be an if de facto rushing yard. That's what was so unique about Bama's offense, and it's what made it so effective. I mean, before I get to Georgia, Caden Proctor got a receiving yard here. Not only did he get a receiving yard, he got a couple. He got a first down. Caden Proctor, one of the biggest humans you've ever seen. I always say maybe he's like the Vince Wilfork of tackles. The dude's massive, and he cut down on that weight and got rewarded with a catch and a first down. I will say with Georgia, if I were awake from a coma and I knew this game was going to happen, and you told me right after, I didn't see the result of it, you said Georgia ran for 6.9 yards per carry, I would have said they won the game comfortably. I would have been able to believe that, sure, maybe it's not a blowout, but it was a win that they could comfortably control the clock, and for 4 quarters, when they needed to get a first down, they could. And honestly, the inverse happened because of how creative Grubb was being able to move around. I think, what was it? The toss play to, I'm going to be so mad at myself. It may have been a toss play to Bernard. Bernard ends up passing it to Horton for a first down. I mean, that it's like Ben Johnson type of stuff that we were watching. But the problem is the recipe for losing a home game like that, outside of probably one of the worst third down musics scenes that I've ever seen. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it shouldn't be that hard to find. Go look on TikTok, Georgia third down. Apparently, they were playing the same sound over and over and over. And when you have gone on third down 19 times, you've heard that sound 19 times and it didn't turn out well. Georgia fans have lost their mind on that. But Georgia lost the penalties, they lost the third down battle, and they lost the turnover battle. And it still was a close loss. I'm not one to say that you can get the moral victories because I want to give Bama all the credit in the world. Bama was number 1 in my preseason rankings. I feel justified in that, but I'm not going to take it and have a crazy pendulum swing of saying, yeah, Alabama's right there in the national title expectations, because we'll talk about tomorrow with Vanderbilt. I'm really worried for Alabama in that matchup. But for Georgia, I think you can honestly say with confidence and conviction that about 90% of the college football public, if you were to ask them going into the season, did you expect any team across the entire country to go undefeated? 90% of them probably say no. And who knows, maybe this was actually tasting your own blood and saying, we need to be better from this point forward. We have the best coach in the country. Sure, our defense maybe needs to tighten things up. There's little things that we can do. We clearly lost a dominant game from a third down perspective that could be an outlier for Alabama. And we only lost a close game, a couple plays here and there. We could have won it. Not a moral victories. I know Kirby Smart would probably throw up in his chair if he heard that. But I think no reason to write off Georgia based on this game, and no reason to write home about Alabama. I hate to be the boring guy that says don't have any brash takeaways from this, but I think this is more of a confirmation that Alabama can recover from Florida State. They look like two completely different programs from the Florida State game to this one. Credit to them. They're back on what I thought they could be. And for Georgia, they just can't get over the Alabama hump, and they just pray that maybe if they get to Georgia or Atlanta more specifically for the SEC title game, they better pray it's not Alabama they're facing. Maybe it's Texas A&M, even a Tennessee rematch. I think that there's a lot to be happy, even if it's a loss, if I'm a Georgia fan. But credit to Ryan Grubb, credit to Alabama, because now they're back on the trajectory that I was hoping them for the rest of the season. Now they have a very difficult path forward. They still have Oklahoma. They still have, I believe, South Carolina in October. If you don't know about South Carolina in October, I hate telling good people bad news. They have Vanderbilt this week and then Auburn at the end of the year, which who knows, probably Deuce Knight is playing in that. So congratulations to Alabama. I think that they're on the trajectory of potentially getting to a national title. We'll see what they look like in their October slate, because there's a lot of games that could be a little shaky. They haven't gotten the full confidence yet. I believe they are capable of stepping up to the moment. Are they capable of not dropping down to whoever they're facing? And for Georgia, I still think of them very highly. I still think that they're potentially a limited team, but a very good limited team. Little Rudy's Cup action. Before we dive into Penn State, Oregon, I have a question I wanted to ask for today's show, because I talked about it on TikTok a little bit and got a lot of pushback, unsurprisingly, from Texas fans. Should Penn State and Texas be in the top 10 going into this week? That's all I'm asking, because my question is rooted in the fact that out of all the top 25 teams, Penn State and Texas, week 6 of the college football season, October 1st, 2025, they're the only ones without a Power 4 win. Now, before you start slamming that keyboard and looking at me as a guy that's just hating on Texas, that's just hating on Penn State, they've only played, one Power 4 program up to this point. You play who's in front of you, all that jazz. All I'm saying is, at this point, what is the limitation of going this far into the season? If it was week 2, week 3, only 3 games played, I'd give you grace. But we complain all the time about preseason rankings, a merit-based ranking. What's your resume? At what point do we just say, you got to earn that top 10 ranking? Because it's also baked into the fact that they haven't looked great against the lower level opponents. I mean, I would have dropped after the UTEP game much more farther. I mean, we're talking about a Texas program that defensively looks great, offensively has looked putrid. They've looked stagnant. Statistically, they've had good moments, but if you watch those games, they don't look pretty at all. They're one of the worst third down teams in the country, and they're going to have a great opportunity against Florida this week. Penn State, one of the worst offensive teams with a ton of returning production. And here's the thing, because I've seen it on Twitter. Texas fans will say, well, we would beat Indiana by 3 touchdowns. Based on what? Well, last year, no. Don't tell me anything about last year. What have you done this year to justify that you were a top 10 team in the country at week 6 of the college football season? Because here's my perspective on it. Drop them out of the top 10. If they go dominate Florida on the road, put them right back in the top 10. Because at least that's a Power 4 win on the road against a very talented program. Sure, they're 1-3, and at that point they would be 1-4. But it's an SEC team on the road. That's something. UTEP, Sam Houston State, and UTSA is not anything. At week 6 of the college football season, it's not anything. Penn State, same exact thing. An overtime loss and a whiteout coming off of a bye. Everything was built for you to go win that. And we'll talk about that game. You do not have a resume right now. And if you wanted to drop them even further, I wouldn't be mad about it. I'm not even saying drop them out of the top 25, but I've seen plenty of people get upset about Notre Dame after the 2 weeks where they were 0-2 and still ranked. Well, what's their resume? They don't have a win. They don't have anything. What does Texas have? What does Penn State have? Because, like I said, we're at week 6. At what point do you have to earn your ranking without having the preseason bias in there? Because I'm not even talking about what the AP poll wants, because the AP poll is going to do what it wants. I'm talking about the reactions. I'm talking about what the fans say. There's been nothing to justify that these two teams could just go blow out anybody else in the top 10, that they should be top 5. I've seen that take before. Based on what is what I ask? Because I'm more than happy to put them right where they deserve. Do they deserve a top 10 ranking based on anything outside of the name of Arch Manning, a very good defense, and preseason hype? Penn State, a defensive coordinator hire in Jim Knowles, who just went to a national championship and won. Drew Aller, potential first-round pick. Returning 2 star running backs who, by my estimate, ran for 139 yards against, I would argue, probably the number 1 team in the country. I understand the one opportunity that they had was against probably number 1 and number 2 in the entire country. Both relatively close losses, double overtime in one, and what was it, 3-point loss in week 1. I hear you. I do. That's why you're ranked, because you're able to step up on those moments. But since then, you weren't even dominating the lower level competition. That's why you're still in the top 20, but not top 10. That's my point. I think it's fair that we talk about the whiteout game. At what point is good enough for Penn State? Because I don't know if you're at a point where you could fire James Franklin. I get it. We see it with, I don't know, the NBA. You can go win a NBA Finals 2 years later, you're getting canned. I would almost compare it to like John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh at least has a Super Bowl, though. If you're from State College, and we'll talk about Oregon because, my goodness, what an incredible win. But we're talking about State College for a second because everything, and I mean everything, was set up for you to win this game. You were at home. You got your night whiteout game. It wasn't a big noon kick out whiteout. That's one hell of a word right there, but you got your night whiteout. You're coming off a bye. You have your returning star quarterback, projected first-round pick. He's got every bells and whistles you've ever wanted. You got both running backs that are going to be, top 2 days picks. Katron Allen, incredibly impactful. Nicholas Singleton, former 5-star, incredibly impactful. You've revamped this wide receiver room. Your tight end position is never going to be a problem. Your defense is going to be good. You have all of these ingredients. And sure, Oregon is a damn good program. But you're also getting Dante Moore going into his first road start. At night, whiteout, everything. It's the same thing we've been talking about. And sure, it went to double overtime. You stepped up at the very end. All for, once again, Drew Aller to throw the pick against the former Purdue safety. I'm going to mess his last name up. Theinman? I apologize. But Drew Aller, once again, when you needed him to step up, he doesn't. I'm out on him. I'm out on Drew Aller. That's just point blank period. I'm out on Drew Aller. He's just not a quarterback that looks comfortable playing the game of football in the most simple way I can put it. When the pocket's completely clean, he could set his feet, he could throw it 80 yards, and sometimes a beautiful ball. And hell, even in this game, there was a moment where I think he slipped through an absolute laser. There's pieces there of an elite quarterback. There really is. And by most metrics, if you were to build a Madden creative player, that's probably the player that you build out. Guy with like 82 speed, 98 throw power, some good accuracy, a lot of the building blocks. But it doesn't look like a guy like Dante Moore. Dante Moore was surgical. You instantly knew when you were watching that football game from quarter one to overtime what quarterback was playing at a higher skill level. It was methodical and surgical. That was Dante Moore. And credit to him and credit to this Oregon team, because this, I think I wrote this down, embodies Dan Lanning more than any Oregon team of the past. And Dan Lanning, I don't want to talk about the video I saw on Twitter. There's something in here that's a little bit of a screw loose situation. You kind of need that if you want to be an elite level head coach. That's just the honest to God truth. And Dan Lanning, this team was physical. They were disciplined. 4 total penalties in the night whiteout. That is a testament to the coaching staff, to the preparedness that this entire program had to be to go across country in this spot against a very talented program at Penn State and have 4 total penalties. Last time they faced off in the Big Ten Championship, 205, 250 plus rushing yards, 139 in this next matchup with 137 passing for Penn State, because Aller is not a guy that elevates the situation around him. He's just not. And that begins to question, is this a guy that you want to take a first round pick and potentially put into a bad situation? What else does he need right now? He's got the OC. Andy Kolenicki is one of the best OCs, one of the most creative OCs in the entire country. 2-star running backs to give you that floor to bounce back. A star tight end. And sure, we could blame the wide receivers last year. You invested in the wide receivers this year. He's just not a quarterback that I think will elevate to the moment. Very similar to James Franklin. Is he a guy that elevates to the moment? For Penn State, is 85% to the national championship good enough for you? Or are you going to look for a guy that can get you to the finish line? Like John Harbaugh right now. He gets you close. He gets you very damn close in 2020, in 2021, in 2025, all the way through. He can get you damn close. But does he get you to the finish line? So much credit to Oregon, man. This is, in my opinion, I think they're the best team in the country. I would rank them number 1. Dante Moore looking like the Heisman front runner. There's no one else I would put as the Heisman front runner outside of Dante Moore. That was surgical. I want to get a hand on the 2022 or the all 22 tape. Surgical. Watching back that game, surgical. Just time and time again, taking what the defense gives him and being just the smarter quarterback and just going with the game flow while you had Drew Aller going against the grain. So much credit to Oregon. To not only get punched back, you feel like the game is over, you get into a double overtime, and you step up to the moment. Those are the differing personalities. Kind of like how a dog will take over the personality of its owner. A football team will take over the personality of its head coach. Aller, Franklin, Penn State, they all are in line in terms of not stepping up to the moment. And Oregon, if for the first time in a while, feels like they've stepped up to what Dan Lanning wants them in terms of physicality. Mateo Yu, he's DJ U's, I believe, brother, was just he solidified himself as a first rounder. There's so much I can credit to Oregon for how good they played in this game because they were remarkable. LSU has found a way to inverse their problems. They did not have a defense with Jane Daniels, wasted away that Heisman year. Truthfully, wasted it away. Very similar to Miami last year. They invested so much into the defense. Blake Baker, we're going to get Harold Perkins back. We're going to basically revamp this entire defense with the guys that we know are going to work. A really good mix. But then the offense continues from the Heisman season, dropping down a little bit last year, and you felt, yeah, we put a lot on Garrett Nussmeier's shoulders, a lot on his shoulders. But, we got Caden Durham, this true freshman running back. He's really good. We're going to have a second-year OC. Yeah, we're losing two critical pieces, and they really do turn out to be very critical pieces on the offensive line. But we added some real talented pieces in terms of Nick Anderson. Barrion Brown was a key piece in the portal. We get Aaron Anderson back and a lot of different guys. This offense, the big question mark being the O-line, but I think we have enough pieces here to feel good. 2 for 11 on third down, 57 rush yards, 2.6 yards per attempt. It's important to note, no Caden Durham. And it's important to note that Garrett Nussmeier is dealing with an injury that you can play through, but when you don't have anything to complement him, we once again get into this territory where we're putting the responsibility and the weight of the world on a quarterback that isn't this plus athlete. Nussmeier can be surgical, but when he's playing at 85, maybe 80, could be even less percentage of what he could be, and you're putting that same responsibility that we saw in 2024, the offense is what it is right now. And maybe they're just trying to limp into a bye week, but you're not going to go win at Oxford. Now, I thought that when I made my prediction that LSU was going to win this game, I thought Caden Durham was going to play. He ended up being a late scratch. I thought a lot of things, but I don't even think Caden Durham's going to fix this rushing offense or the lack of commitment to the run. I really don't know what the identity is of this LSU offense, and we're at week 6. The offensive line is a problem. It's a massive problem, knowing what they have on the rest of the schedule. And even when Ole Miss has 14 penalties, loses the penalty battle at home somehow, loses the turnover battle, they still dominated. Now, obviously, the score will not indicate that Ole Miss dominated here. I think the only thing that was stopping them from blowing out LSU was the penalties and turnovers. The things that they were shooting themselves in the foot. Because LSU basically limped their way into this game being competitive. Their offense is what's holding them back because the defense is not the problem here. It's far from the problem. And I begin to wonder, even if we go into the bye week with LSU and Nussmeier gets fully healthy and Caden Durham gets healthy and all these pieces are there, the core problem is the offensive line and the lack of an identity. You're not going to win football games like this. And what I thought was potentially, just something we kind of build up and it becomes a rumor that, we see what Clemson became and then LSU beat them, so it doesn't become as much of a quality win. So maybe they're a little overrated. And I still really did trust this team. My trust has now wavered a little bit, but what hasn't wavered is my faith in Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. If I am Steve Sarkisian, I am pissed because right now I'm watching a D2 national championship winning quarterback, Trinidad Chambly. Respect his name. You can't take him out at this point. Even if Austin Simmons comes back healthy, you respect the hot hand. But a guy that I don't think anyone in the state of maybe Texas or the surrounding areas knew who Trinidad Chambly is. I don't even think Ole Miss fans, they probably got their game sheet, looked at the depth chart, looked at the two-man, said, oh, I hope we could see maybe a little bit of this Trinidad Chambly. Oh, okay, so we're going to blow out this team, and he's just going to run in maybe a couple of touchdowns, you know. But the reason why I mentioned Sarkisian is all this hype about Arch Manning. He's this immaculate play caller. This offense is going to be just unstoppable. And Lane Kiffin can just go pick up basically anybody and it's going to work. And that's not to discredit Chambly. There's a reason why Lane Kiffin said, okay, I'm going to bring you onto this roster. Because he knows talent. He knows quarterbacks are going to fit his system. It's a two-way street here. We're not going to disrespect Chambly because he's a D2 national championship quarterback. But at the same time, it really does feel like anybody that we drop into this Ole Miss offense, it's going to work. It just is. And they were able to move the ball just enough against this LSU team that was number 4 in the nation. They basically swapped spots. I don't know where LSU fell in the AP poll, but Ole Miss number 4 in the nation. A little high for me, but what could be the story of the season is Trinidad Chambly, this D2 championship head quarterback, steps in for Austin Simmons, someone that has 8 degrees, and we thought he was going to be a potential, Tua 2.0 for this Ole Miss team, but we didn't know what Ole Miss was going to be, just primarily because a mixed bag of they lost a lot, they did, and they didn't have as remarkable of a portal as they did the year prior. So we're looking at a mixed bag here, and we didn't really know what Ole Miss could be. I believe their line was 8.5? Number 4 team in the nation right now. And LSU, it's not a Nussmeier problem. It's not a Durham problem. I don't even know if it's a fully offensive line problem. It's an identity problem. And I feel like the pressurized system that Brian Kelly's built out. Now, can we ask a question, by the way? Can we ask if the offense is going to get better? No, I'll leave it as is. What's their identity? That's my biggest worry for him. Well, we're going to take a minute, and I'll say this. We got about 3 more games to talk about. 3 more. We're about 32 minutes into the show. I appreciate everyone who's watched the show. For a multitude of reasons, this is a small channel right now. We just continuously keep each step forward. Every subscriber count, I check every day, guys. Like, it's not a pride thing. It's not an ego thing to be like, oh, I want to see the channel get to 200 subs or anything. What I want to get to is to see this chat full, talking with you guys. That's what I want to get to. That's what matters the most to me. I believe in Kretschmann Media. I believe in this channel. I believe, honestly, in myself to stay consistent with this. And so every time that I see a comment pop up, I promise you, I love talking with you guys. It means the world. But, this is going to be bad. Now, I know Josh Payton made this the Sarah McLachlan special. If you don't know what that is, it's just the blowout of the week. We do have to talk about Auburn A&M. A&M finds a new way to win, and that's massive. That's a massive story to me, because what I thought could be potentially, we thought that this could be the rat poison theory in play. Starting to believe your own hype coming off of a bye. Offense didn't look great. But the thing that I can step away from this game with Texas A&M was not only were you able to go on the road in South Bend and beat a Notre Dame team 41-40, you had to put up 40 points to beat them. But you were also able to fight and win a rock fight against an Auburn program that has a very talented defense. We'll talk about the offense here shortly. But your defense stepped up to the plate. Because one of the concerns, I think, internally with Texas A&M, and what a lot of people who follow college football took note of, was, sure, A&M was able to get that impressive win. They don't do this, all that stuff. But the defense did give up 40. And that's kind of what sold them at the end of last year. for that November month that they lost to South Carolina, Auburn, Texas, all that, you know? And the defense, did it really improve? You lose 2 edge defenders that went in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. You begin to wonder, did this defense get better? Did Mike Elko really put his paws on this? And then we get to Auburn. Now, it is Jackson Arnold. But at the end of the day, if you were a defense that was prone to explosives, those 20-yard pass plays, and we saw Oklahoma, a very good defense. Auburn had some success around that. Obviously, we have like the 10-plus sacks, but there were moments where Auburn had found some success. A&M turned that around and got 0 for 13 on third down. If you got Auburn on third down, drive was over. Drive was over. 52 rush yards. Some of the notion with Texas A&M's defense was you were going to be able to run the football on them. 125 pass yards. You couldn't throw on them. And what really, I think, slowed this game down, because I think a lot of the guys that watch all 22 tape, a lot of film, just go check their records on what they've all said when watching this game. How did A&M not blow them out by 20? Because you could see it on the field, the line of scrimmage, everything across the board. Check, 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 check. Texas A&M was the better team here. But why was it still, 10-point win here? Well, 23 penalties across both teams. What I was a little worried about was the whole makeup call situation after Auburn, Oklahoma. They were quick to throw the penalty flags, to say the least. A&M's also not been the most disciplined in terms of that. Some of the pass interferences. That's what I'm a little concerned about when we talk about Mississippi State tomorrow. But at the end of the day, Texas A&M not only stepped up defensively, but they won offensively in a unique fashion. Not unique in the terms of just a football game, but we had been talking about Texas A&M as this passing offense that can throw all over the football field. Craver, Concepcion, Bussey, all of these, right? But what were we talking about going into the season? That they could run the damn ball. Amari Daniels, Reuben Owens, and Le'Veon Moss with Marcel Reed. And Le'Veon Moss, who apparently was sick going into this game, not 100%, ran all over this Auburn defense that was number 1 in the SEC going into this game in terms of rushing defense or defense overall. And the fact that Texas A&M was able to win in that fashion, was able to win in the way that we saw against Notre Dame, if they are able to win in multiple ways, that's a college football playoff team. That's the difference. The problem with Texas A&M last year was it was very narrow in how they were going to win football games, especially with the revolving door at the quarterback position. But once Le'Veon Moss went down, their identity of running the football, ball control football, playing just a good enough defense to keep you in this game was gone. And that's why we turned and saw what happened against November, where South Carolina, Auburn, you weren't able to run the ball effectively because Moss is the heartbeat. He doesn't, I'm not kidding when I say this, maybe 3-4 times in his career has he been tackled for a loss. He's always going to push the line forward. And we saw a little bit of Reuben Owens get out in the open field, first time since his injury where he was really moving. Even Amari Daniels. The one concern I have is it doesn't seem like Marcel Reed is super interested in running the ball. I hope he's not too in his head of wanting to be the passer. I think he's proven himself that. I do think he needs to hit some of his deep throws, but this was an impressive win for A&M. And for Auburn, I'll say this before we close this chapter on this game. You can't fire Hugh Freeze. As much as you may want to, I'm talking to Auburn Tiger faithful right here. You've invested too much into this team. You just have. You're going to lose Cam Coleman. You're going to lose all the talented pieces on this defense because of how good you've been able to recruit and bring in portal guys. You can't just click the restart button. You're going to start another 3-year rebuild? Because I think that's what's going to happen. Are you going to be non-competitive for 90% of the 2020s in what is going to be the golden age of college football to acquire talent, at least in that perspective? Auburn is going to sit around and just buy out another head coach. You invested so much to Hugh Freeze. We're just going to burn that money, guys. I think as unfortunate as it is, unlike like a guy like Billy Napier with Hugh Freeze, they've put their chips all into the middle for a guy like Freeze for him to work out. And what I could see the path being is they move to Deuce Knight. Deuce Knight shows enough. And you go into next year and you say maybe Deuce Knight is the jump that you get, that he's the quarterback of the future, because clearly the Arnold experiment did not work. It didn't work. He's just not a good quarterback. It is one read, we're going over here, or we are potentially running with the football, or I'm holding it in the pocket and taking a sack. Guys, he's a 5-star. That's all he's got. He doesn't have this crazy arm. He's not this crazy plus athlete. And in terms of up here, he's just not good enough. And I remember Auburn fans telling me, you could go check out my TikTok, way back in the offseason when I was concerned about this offense. I said, their scrimmages have been bad. Defense is dominating. I was told, well, defense is traditionally dominating the scrimmage. Talk to me now. That's all I'm saying. Talk to me now. This Auburn offense is what's going to hold them back from even being competitive this year. So at what point do you pull the trigger on Deuce Knight and try to salvage not only your job, but the talent that has been invested in this roster? Because I think the talent of this roster is great. It's the quarterback and the offense that's being limited. And we can talk about the offensive line too, but when you have a quarterback that's going to hold on the ball for that long, it's not going to happen. Tennessee and Mississippi State had a classic. As we were closing the chapter on the first two slate of games, Mississippi State, Tennessee still lingered a little bit. And man, first of all, Mississippi State should be ranked. They beat Arizona State, and then Arizona State finds a way to backdoor themselves into a ranked spot. And then you play Tennessee competitively, and yet they're still not ranked. To each their own, I guess. I feel like we're starting to see a little bit of the Joey Aguilar of the past. This was their first true road test for Tennessee, getting to see what they could look like. Obviously, they played, I believe it was Syracuse on the road. That's not a real road test, in my opinion. We're talking about a Tennessee program that was able to put up points. They're always going to be able to put up points. What Mississippi State was able to do was run the damn ball on them. 198 rushing yards. And I saw this as a trap spot for Tennessee. I think a lot of people did. I took them at plus money. I even took a Mississippi State money line just for fun. Because truthfully, this was a very tough spot for Tennessee. Going on the road with a transfer quarterback, you don't know what you're going to get until you hop in the water. You don't know if it's warm. You don't know if it's cold. You don't know if they're going to shrink, expand, whatever it may be. This was a huge test for Tennessee. And the fact that they got the win against them Cowbells is quite impressive, in my opinion. Because this could have easily derailed their season. You lost to Georgia. You come in. You lose to those damn Cowbells. You still have a very tough path ahead with the rest of your SEC schedule. You still have Alabama on your slate, third Saturday of October. Vanderbilt. Like, there's plenty of spots you could drop a game. But you find a way to win. Because statistically, if you look at the box score and you're just going to box score watch this, pretty even across the board. Matched up in terms of turnovers, third down completion, all these different areas. That's why we went to overtime, and it's a credit to Mississippi State to step up to the plate. And then we got to see a little bit of Aguilar, a little shaky. But if you're a Tennessee fan, I think you feel pretty damn good knowing that you leave that Starkville Stadium with a win. And I got to say this, Chris Brazzell, whatever you want to call him, dude's a problem. They finally have a wide receiver at Tennessee. It's been a little bit of a problem over the past couple of years with the Milton era, and then obviously last year with Nico, and the year prior with Nico. The wide receiver position had been kind of not that impressive. You had Thornton, you had what Squirrel White was supposed to be, but you didn't have that dominant guy, that go-to receiver, that star at the wide receiver position that we thought that they could be potentially just continuously funneling in and out. Kind of like what we saw with the Alabama years, where they just are going to continuously have great wide receivers because of how good this offense is. And Chris Brazzell and then Matthews are both very dynamic wide receivers. I think that's been a huge difference for them. But I'll say this, Mississippi State. We'll talk a lot about them tomorrow, so I don't want to just brush over, but they're a good team. They should be ranked. And credit to Tennessee, because I thought they were going to lose this one. And for the last game we'll talk about today before signing off till tomorrow, and this has been the longest show that we've done, Ohio State finds a way to beat Washington. Now, unfortunately for Washington, I believe it was the second longest home winning streak. We had both the top winning streak in home games with Georgia, and then the second one, both fall in the same weekend. What a crazy weekend of college football it's been. We've covered 6 games at this point. Washington going 1 for 10 on third down, 61 rushing yards. And then, yes, they went 2 for 3 on the red zone, 2 of them being field goals. So 0 for 3 in terms of red zone touchdowns. And when you're playing the number 1 team in the country, a defense like that, when you get into the red zone, you have to capitalize. Damon Williams made some plays here and there. Sayin keeps finding ways to win. Jeremiah Smith, best corner or best wide receiver in the country, like by far. No disrespect to Coleman, Ryan Williams. I'll even admit I was a little bit wrong on Ryan Williams. Ohio State's a very good team and a very talented program. You can't leave the door open for them to just out-talent you. Because I give credit to Patricia, this defense, they deserve credit. They do. And so does, Julian Sayin as he's opening the chapter of his career, and wins like this in this environment should be very much credited to him to find ways to do that. But you also just don't want to hold their hand while they do it. Going 1 for 10 on third down. Like I said, the red zone, the rush yards, you don't even have a thumbprint on the game. Like, you're going to make it easier for them. And you just felt like the game was something that was a grudge fight for the first couple of quarters. And as we get closer to the end of the game, Washington loosens their grip a little bit in a game of tug of war where it's, eye to eye for a little bit. Ohio State's too talented to just not yank that rope and you fall face first into the mud. And that's what happened with Washington. I still think Washington's a very, very good team. This was a trap spot for Ohio State, but I think they're kind of in the Ryan Day era, kind of immune for these trap spots, especially knowing the coverage around it. It was across country. It was in an underrated environment. You have a dynamic quarterback you're facing against, but I think Ohio State's kind of grown past those games. Teams like Texas isn't past those games. I think they kind of played down to that competition. Georgia, I think, is kind of past those, unless it's Kentucky. But Ohio State, I think, is a little bit immune for this. And so credit to them. Washington, I still think they have to go cross country to play Maryland and play a true freshman quarterback that is lighting up the college football world. We may actually have to cover that game because I find that game fascinating. And one of the big things I always say about the Stadium Pulse is we're going to cover all the games. It's not going to be, well, obviously not every single game, but I don't want to just talk about Ohio State and Texas and Georgia the whole time. I believe his name, I don't want to mess it up. The Maryland quarterback's a baller. Damon Williams is a baller. That matchup's going to be crazy. The fact that they have to basically flip the script and go across the country, that's going to be absolutely insane. But like I said, we may have a little bit of a longer show tomorrow. I got to still write out the script for it, but we've gone 49 minutes. Let me know if you like these longer shows. I don't mind doing them. We've been kind of talking about potentially doing more shows, but would you rather have a longer show and just do 3 a week? Let me know down in the comments. Truthfully, like I'm always open to feedback from you guys, but with that in mind, thank you guys so much for watching the Stadium Pulse. My name is Tegan Randolph, your host. This is powered by Kretschmann Media, and have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday.